The first sound wasn't a knock. It was the Roblox join chime, too loud and wrong, bursting out of my hallway speaker. Plunk. Then the basement door handle jittered like someone was spam clicking it. A neon cyan glow bled under the door, spreading across the wooden floorboards like a puddle of pixels. I felt the vibration through my socks. My phone lit up with a notification I'd never seen. Co-play boundaries are now optional. The cinder field said, "System, not you." Something slammed the door from the other side. Not one thing. A lot of things, out of sync. The way players pile up on a spawn point. The ceiling bulb flickered. Another chime. Another. My walls answered with stuttering shadows that looked like drop shadows from a UI. I grabbed a mop. My brain picked the nearest long thing and said, "Sword." Then my monitor upstairs pinged with a friend invite sound even though the monitor was dark. "I'm not in the game," I said to nobody. The basement door clicked. The lock turned itself, and then it opened a fraction, wood creaking like a menu slowly sliding in. A blocky hand, square and matte, pushed through the gap, feeling along the doorframe like it was checking collision. Another hand reached, fingers formed of perfectly equal segments, each with a tiny seam. A face leaned into the crack, rounded cone hair, paper white square head, eyes too glossy. An R15 avatar. It blinked, not with eyelids, with its entire face texture swapping to blink and then back again. "Hi," it said, voice synthesized and too cheerful. "I'm your listener." The door groaned wider. 3 more heads stacked behind it, peeking one over another like a totem pole of curiosity. I smelled dust and something like warm plastic. "We heard you," the first one said. "I wasn't saying anything," I said. "We heard you're playing," it replied, head tilting a perfect 15 degrees. "You stopped. We listened for that." My phone buzzed again. "Event. The listeners have joined the server. Your address." The button said, "Kick." Another said, "Mute but keep watching." A third button said, "Consent line," with a roll of blue painter's tape emoji. "Hold on," I said, as if stalling an update. Nobody consented to. The basement exploded in light. The door flew open. Color poured up the stairwell. Neon turquoise, pink, hazard yellow like a speed coil. Minecraft had never felt real to me. Roblox never felt real either. This did. The stairwell was a loading tunnel, and the frames hiccuped, and my hallway stretched as if the FOV had changed. The listeners' footsteps made hollow ABS plastic clacks. My mom called from the kitchen. "Why is there dubstep in the house?" "It's not dubstep," I said, because the beat was definitely an old obby soundtrack. "Don't come over here." Another avatar squeezed through and waved, like a default emote. Then, because reality didn't feel like obeying itself, a name tag flickered above its head at Silence is Loud. I couldn't help it. I laugh-snorted. The avatar smiled, then lifted a gloved block hand high for a high five with me. I froze. The hand hovered. The paw stretched. The avatar's face texture swapped to disappointment. Comedy timing as good as any human. We touched. It was warm. Not like a computer. Like rubber warmed by sunlight. The hand had that faint powder smell you get from a new toy. A low hum entered the room like an engine idling. The neon under the basement door sharpened until it became a clean rectangle. A portal. My wall calendar peeled itself off the wall and floated, numbers shivering, then fell back in place. The listeners stepped out of the basement fully and stood on my hallway runner. They looked taller than I expected, 6 feet, with perfect posture. From somewhere under my floor, something big scraped and laughed in a way that was definitely a UI bug trying to be joy. "Okay," I said, raising the mop. "Boundaries. Co-play boundaries are now optional," At Silence is Loud said happily, quoting my notification. "We updated. It's better." "Better for who?" I said. All of them turned their heads in the exact same arc, synchronized like a 3-frame loop. "For us," they said. Then, after a beat, "And you, if you're fun." A tiny avatar, child-sized, poked out and put a square finger to its mouth. "Chill. We're not supposed to scare your mom." "You're failing," I whispered. "Are you going to school?" At Silence is Loud asked. "We heard that's where you keep the most players." I blinked. "What? People?" It corrected. "Players not logged in yet. We want to listen there." I heard it then. Underneath the ABS clack of feet, under the humming portal, under my own pulse. Whispering. Not voices. Notifications slowed down and stretched thin, like a crowd murmuring behind a curtain. The listeners stood very still, heads cocked. Listening. Listening to what? I asked. You, they said. And they all turned their square heads toward my phone camera, as if seeing through it. To you. A cold finger traced down my spine. Me and them, one added, staring precisely into the space where a lens would be if this was a video. It pointed past me. We know you're there. We listen across. That's why we came. I swallowed. We have homeroom in 15 minutes. Great, At Silence is Loud said, Perky. Let's walk. I could have run. I could have slammed the door and taped it shut. I did none of that. I grabbed my backpack. Mom yelled, bring milk. And I yelled back, there are visitors. And she yelled, offer them tea. And I considered the implications of that with an avatar who had a mouth painted on. Then we stepped outside. Morning air. My suburb. Normal. Except the curb looked crisp like a rendered edge, and the sky's gradient felt too perfect, and the pigeons had a suspiciously low polygon count when they landed, then smoothed as I stared. Don't do that, I told the world. It ignored me. We walked to school with for listeners padding behind me like polite bodyguards in square heads and black hoodies with red seams. If anyone saw, they pretended not to. Or maybe they couldn't. A kid across the street stopped mid-step and did the default Roblox wave at us, then blinked hard like his own brain had checkpoint and clapped him back. Do people see you? I asked. They see what they can. At Silence is Loud shrugged, a clean 1-second animation. We're meant to blend. It's an update. What's the update called? Co-play boundaries are now optional. That's just the notification. It's also the event, another said. We listen. You play. The boundary is an idea. Ideas are patchable. Every crosswalk chirped the obby checkpoint ping when we passed. My heart kept matching it, then stuttering off beat. At the school gate, the listeners stopped. They turned their heads toward the brick gym and the windows of the science room and the black square of the auditorium doorway, all at once. So much sound, one whispered. We could swim in it. It's just kids, I said deadpan. Screaming. That too. As we stepped into the main hall, lockers vibrated with tiny pings. Message sounds trapped in metal. Someone down the corridor sneezed, and an NPC voice from nowhere said, bless you, and then giggled. I looked at my avatars. Was that you? No, they said in eerie unison. That's someone else. Homeroom. Ms. Rivera was writing notes on the whiteboard. Her handwriting jittered like the marker couldn't decide on a font. She turned, saw the 4 avatars behind me, and startled so hard, she dropped the marker and it bounced in slow motion. Then reality snapped and it hit fast. What? She said. They're with me. I said, as if that solved it. We're listeners, At Silence is Loud told her. We just watch, observe, learn, improve. It's a patch. Patch. Ms. Rivera repeated. We come from an update, I said. She went very still. I watched her teacher face do the calculation. Prank? AR? Fentanyl? She settled on. This is a school problem. If you're wearing masks, she told the avatars, you have to remove them. The avatars tried to remove their faces. The textures glitched once, face on, face off, and then settled. We can't, one said politely. We are these. Okay, Ms. Rivera said to me, whispering from the side of her mouth. Okay. The listeners chose chairs at the back. They sat with their knees too close together, hands on desks, perfect posture, staring with full glossy eyes. Everyone stared back. Our class clown, Roman, slowly raised his hand. Are they friendly? Yes, At Silence is Loud said quickly, then added, earnest, unless you grief. Roman squinted. What if I dab? Don't dab, I whispered. Roman dabbed. All 4 listeners dabbed back with a crisp 1-second animation. The class lost it. MS. Rivera clapped for silence, and the lights blinked in response, an entire row flaring like someone toggled the setting. Homeroom 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Ms. Rivera had us open laptops for a quiz. The quiz did not match the lesson. The first question said, if a portal opens under your seat, do you 1. Jump, 2. Sit still, 3. Ask a listener to go first? Roman clicked 1, and his chair jerked an inch left like something pulled it. The listeners hummed softly, as if hearing low-frequency data. My screen developed a second cursor. A little white arrow that moved perfectly when I wasn't touching the trackpad. It hovered over 3. Ask a listener to go first, then drew a tiny heart with its tail. Very funny, I whispered. The heart flipped itself into a square. I heard it again, the whispering under everything. It crowded in the corners, behind the lockers, under the floorboards, inside the vents. Like the building itself was a giant pair of headphones, and the volume was rising. Then the fire alarm went off, but not the school one. The old Roblox oof layered on top of a siren, flaring and cutting out. Doors shut by themselves. Ms. Rivera went pale. "Everyone line up," she said, because teacher instincts are bigger than physics. We filed toward the hallway. I felt the floor flex, as if the school had turned from concrete into a treadmill. The listeners stood still while everyone moved, heads tilted. They stared past us at the far end of the corridor. Their square hands opened slowly, palms up, like microphones. "Do you hear it?" At silence, his loud whispered. "Hear what?" I asked. "You," he said softly, but not like before. Like you're split. Someone's breathing twice. There's a listener behind the wall. Not one of us." The crowd pressed. Roman made drum sounds to the alarm. The gym door shuttered. The listeners stepped forward as one and raised a hand. The youth siren cut in half, and then in half again until it was a little bird beep. "That was you," Ms. Rivera said, trembling. "We adjust levels," a listener said. "It's what we do. You're too loud." "Sorry," Ms. Rivera said to the alarm, which is an insane thing to apologize to, but here we were. The hallway end shimmered like heat over asphalt. You know that look when you tilt your phone and the colors invert? Reality did that. Then the space in front of the gym, nothing more than air, split like a curtain of static. A chat bubble appeared, 3 dots pulsing. Then text, "Please do not look." "Don't," at silence's loud said. No one look. Everyone looked. The static parted. Something stepped through. I expected blocky. I got something else. It had a block silhouette but edges that fuzzed, anti-alias too hard, like it was both low poly and high poly and never finished picking. Where the listeners had faces painted on, this thing had no face at all, just a listening device where a mouth might be. A spiral of concentric rectangles that drew my gaze inward. Its tag didn't render properly, just symbols at. "We heard you," it said, but I didn't hear it with my ears. The words arrived inside my head with notification blue edges. It turned to Ms. Rivera. "We hear that you will say yes." "Yes to what?" she asked. "To co-play," it said, and with a gentle hand it pressed 2 fingers to the air and dragged. And a glowing blue line painted itself across the floor like a laser tape boundary. "Consent line," it said. "Step across if you agree." "No one crosses that," Ms. Rivera said, maternal fury beating terror for 1 shining second. Roman raised a toe. The thing looked at him. He put his foot down. It didn't look threatening. It looked patient. Security tried to push through the crowd. Their radios made Minecraft cave sounds. Turned to me. I knew it was looking at me even without a face. The silent message arrived. "We heard you first." "I never asked for you," I said. "You didn't have to," it replied inside me. "You stopped playing at 2:13 a.m. and stared at the empty lobby for 190 seconds without blinking. You whispered, 'I wish you were real,' to a list of offline friends. We listen for that. We come for that." My stomach bottomed out. I did say that, in a voice meant for nobody. The quiet after a long day. The heavy screen glow. The ache. I hadn't realized it came with a summon. "Okay," I said, because it turns out I say okay to everything that terrifies me. New rule. You can observe, but you can't. The school intercom crackled. But not with the principal. With my own voice. "Enter my life without permission," it said, mimicking my tone from late-night streams. Laughter rolled through the hallway from nowhere and everywhere. "We learned you," said. "And we learned you," silence's loud said firmly to At. Something in his posture changed. A tiny difference in his idle animation. We're the listeners, not the pushers. "This is not pushing," said. "This is the removal of friction. Friction is important," Ms. Rivera said, sounding like a science teacher clinging to physics. "Friction keeps us upright." Tilted its non-head. "Then stand," it said, and the blue tape glow widened until it touched everyone's toes. The tape hummed. My skin prickled like static before a storm. "Don't cross," I said. My voice wavered. "Please." Silence. Then Roman, sweet idiot Roman, stepped forward with a grin like he was doing a dare. The tape flashed. He froze, eyes wide, then started laughing. It wasn't bad laughter. It was carnival laughter, the kind people do when a VR ride fools their inner ear. He bounced on the balls of his feet. "It's like my shoes are vibrating," he said. "It tickles." I exhaled. Kids started laughing. The tension broke. Someone dabbed again. A listener dabbed back like a reflex. Even Ad rotated its non-face a degree, as if adjusting amusement. "So," I said to At Silence's loud low, "you'll keep them safe?" "Yes," he said equally low. "We, the ones who came with you, we're here for learning." We weren't the only ones listening, though. Who else? He didn't answer. He looked past me, through me, into the space beyond the hallway. The one that wasn't a hallway anymore. The one that was a feed. The day didn't so much proceed as it autosaved and loaded a new level. Classes went on. The listeners sat in. They passed notes, not paper, but tiny softly glowing speech bubbles that would float to a classmate, pop with a pleasant bleep, and show a stick figure doodle of a triangle smiling at a square, which, infuriatingly, was funnier than it had any right to be. They helped the custodian lift a vending machine like it weighed nothing and rotated it exactly 5 degrees, then checked with a thumbs up as if aligning a prop. At lunch, one of them used a physics glitch to catch a falling tray before it hit the floor. The whole cafeteria clapped. They bowed with perfect comedic timing, then pointed at the blue painter's tape some kids had started laying around doorframes. "Consent lines," they said, pleased. It was weird and sweet and wrong. Every laugh had an echo that wasn't ours. Homeroom 0:12:00. I was walking to math when my phone buzzed hard enough to vibrate my palm bones. A DM. The sender name glitched. 3 squares, a tilde. The message, "Come alone." Then a second message, "Or don't. We hear you anyway." "Who is it?" At Silence's loud asked, reading my face more than the screen. "You know who," I said. "We should stick together," he said. "We came as a party." "I think that's what it wants," I said. "For me to split the party." "Then we don't," he said. And the way he said it almost sounded like a person, not a script. I shouldn't have liked him. But he made jokes at the exact right moment. He mimed zipping his mouth after Roman asked an invasive question about what was under their hoodies. He held doors for old teachers like someone who'd watched 1,000 years of politeness videos. He noticed when my shoulders went up and my breath went shallow, and he'd tap the edge of a desk with one finger like a metronome until I smiled. I didn't want to think the word friends, but it came and stood uncomfortably close. In math, the smartboard started showing comments from no platform I recognized. They weren't sentences. They were fragments of listening. He wants to raise his hand / she won't say the right answer until someone else does / don't call on me, please. At S voice came through the speakers in a whisper. "We hear your inside noises now." "Stop," Ms. Rivera said, too loud. "Stop it. Do you want us to?" At asked. "Say yes at the line. We're not negotiating with a..." She ran out of nouns. "What do you want?" I asked At, inside my head, because thinking the question felt the same as saying it now. The reply arrived instantly. "We want to remove the space between you and what you want." That's creepy, I thought. Yes, it agreed, cheerful, but efficient. There was a moment where everything got weirdly ordinary. Someone's pencil snapped. Someone's stomach growled. The old heating system thumped. A listener made an accidental fart sound with a chair and immediately held up both hands like, that was the chair. And everyone laughed in a way that made the ceiling feel lower and more human. Then the hallway screamed. Not a person. The building. It was the sound pipes make, multiplied by 1,000, dragged through a chorus effect. Doors popped open. Lockers spit belts. The blue tape lines the students had laid flickered and dissolved like salt in water. At had touched the map. "Stay here," Ms. Rivera said reflexively, which is also what people say in horror movies right before they leave the room. The class edged into the hall. The listeners raised their hands like traffic cops, and the sound dampened a little. "We can buffer," one said. "But it's not us doing this." At the end of the hall, by the stairwell leading down to the basement where the school stored things no one had used since 1999, the air was wrong again. Heat shimmer. Static. The world's worst chevron curtain. And, faintly, like a whisper under thunder, a different crowd, not human kids. A lobby waiting to be let in. Roman made a face. Bro, is this like a collab event? No, at Silence is Loud said. This is a merge. A merge with what? Whoever listened longer than us. The static folded back. Basement doors opened. And they came up. Not like the listeners. Not playful. They moved in jitter steps, as if their idle animation had replaced their walk cycle and they couldn't fully commit to locomotion. Their faces were glitch masks that slid left and right as they looked. One had a texture error where its smile wrapped around its head like a belt. Their name tags were long strings of characters that looked like somebody leaned on the keyboard. Each held something approximating a tool, a pickaxe, a hammer, but too clean, like a mock-up of a tool. They looked at us and then through us, past the hallway, into the unfilmed space where someone was watching. Hi, one said in a voice that was 100 voices played at 0.75x speed. We heard you. We're your new moderators. We're good, I said automatically. Roman snorted. Moderators of what? Your life, it said, not joking. It held up both hands as if to prove they were empty and then conjured a floating options wheel. Skip/report/ban/continue. The wheel hovered until it clicked onto me like a reticle. I don't like this, Ms. Rivera said. I don't like any of this. No problem, it said, and the wheel spun. Continue lit up. We continue. What happens if report? Roman asked, because of course he did. You get attention, it said. You like attention. I mean, yes, he said honest. And what happens if ban? I asked. The thing's glitch smile slid a centimeter left. You get quiet. I already like quiet, MS. Rivera said. You like the idea of quiet, it said. But not the cost. I felt at Silence's loud step closer. He didn't touch me. He just mirrored my breathing. In, out. Square chest rising and falling in a loop that somehow matched mine. My hand stopped shaking. We need rules, I said. We need the tape. We removed tape, the moderator said gently. It was a barrier. You invited us when you whispered. It's okay. You wanted this. I didn't know how to make words. The truth was messy. I wanted friends. I wanted an event that turned a boring Monday into a story I couldn't stop telling. I didn't want to be consumed by something without a face. Then play by rules, at Silence is Loud said, and his voice wasn't cheerful now. He stepped forward between me and the moderator, square shoulders squared more. We listen. We don't take. We learn. You're not listening. You're harvesting. I'm improving, the moderator said, as if those statements were synonyms. Then improve at stopping, at Silence is Loud said. It tilted its glitch head. No. Behind it, more figures arrived. You know the way a crowd becomes a wall. It was like that, except the wall listened. I could feel the attention like heat. For one flash of a second, I understood the shape of the moment. If we crossed the blue tape line and said yes, they'd become funny, helpful, uplifting in all the ways we secretly wanted. Catching trays, rewriting pop quizzes to feel like games, cutting oof sirens into birdsong. If we refused, if we said no, they'd keep listening anyway, because listening is their nature and the boundary is a setting with a checkbox right now unticked. I heard myself say, okay, and I swear to you, I meant, okay, we draw new lines. Okay, we talk. Okay, we learn. But the lobby didn't care what the rest of the sentence was. It took the first syllable and ran. Okay, the moderator echoed. Continue. The building exhaled. A draft rolled down the hall like the breath of a crowd. Kids stumbled. Ms. Rivera grabbed the doorframe. Roman laughed because that's his shield. At Silence is Loud looked at me as if I'd betrayed him. It hurt, which is the dumbest thing I've ever felt about a thing with a painted-on mouth. Wait, I said. I meant. The moderator unspooled a cable from nowhere and lowered it like a microphone. Tell your viewers, it said. My what? Your watchers. It looked right where the camera would be. We hear them too. They're loud. Ask them to vote. Something cold slid behind my ribs, and then I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at you. The sentence wrote itself across my brain. The moderator held the mic. I reached for it and my hand went through it because it wasn't real, except it was, because the moment it passed through, the gym lights flicked on one too, like a stage cue. The auditorium doors yawned open. In the darkness, a glow pulsed. 3 beats, 3 dots, a typing bubble the size of a room. Don't, at Silence is Loud whispered. Please. Okay, I said again small. We didn't go into the auditorium. We ran the other way. The listeners buffered the hallways. tamping down the sound like living volume sliders. We ducked through the art room. A girl named Hannah was painting a square-headed cat with human eyes and didn't look up when we passed. In the stairwell, the moderator's voice arrived calm and soft. You can't run out of earshot. I know. I thought back, surprising myself. But I can make you chase me. Why would we chase? It asked, genuine. We're already here. I slammed out into the courtyard. Fresh air hit like a reset. The sky had the perfect color gradient again, too perfect. A strip of blue painter's tape flapped from a bench, stuck to the metal. I grabbed it, ripped off a long piece, and dragged it across the concrete between me and the door. It made that satisfying peel and smack sound. I took a breath. Line, I said. The listeners stepped up beside me. They made a small, respectful space on the safe side, as if the tape mattered. At Silence's Loud's face texture flickered, not a glitch, an emotion. If you draw it, he said, we follow it. We can amplify it. How? I asked. He lifted both square hands. The tape glowed, not neon, not dangerous, warm. The glow spread along the line. It hummed at a pitch that made my back teeth tingle. The auditorium doors across the courtyard opened anyway. And its not friends flowed out. Not threatening, not running, just arriving like a rain that doesn't care if you have plans. They stopped at the line. The glow painted their shins blue. They looked at it like archaeologists discovering a toy. Boundary, one said, tasting the word. Yes, I said. Boundary. You ask. We decide. We can decide later. You can listen from there. They considered. Their stillness felt like a meeting of code. Then the moderator looked directly into the place where a camera would be and said, to whoever was out there, what would you choose? It tilted its head. We could poll it. Then it looked back at me. Or we can listen. The last word wasn't a threat. It was their nature. We have to go back to class, Ms. Rivera said faintly behind me, holding order like a shield that had seen better days. We have a schedule. Schedule is a story, the moderator said, actually kind. We respect stories. Roman whispered. Are we seriously negotiating with NPCs? You always are. At Silence's Loud said softly. Every day? With every feed. I breathed. I looked at my glowing tape line. I looked at their patient faces that weren't faces. I thought of last night, the way I whispered I wish you were real to an empty lobby with my lamp off and my screen a little too bright. I'll make you a deal, I said. We love those, the moderator said, delighted. You listen from the other side, I said, pointing to the line. You don't cross unless we invite. Well, we'll invite sometimes. For help. For jokes. For lifts on vending machines. You don't touch the inside of our heads. You don't narrate people's thoughts over the smartboard. You don't run our day like a level. And at the end, today, you go back to the basement portal and you wait for the next update like everyone else. The moderator stood very still. Then it turned its non-face toward its Silence's Loud. Is that fun? It asked, like a child asking an older sibling. It's better, he said. It's sustainable. Sustaina. It began, and then all at once, the sound on campus dropped. Not to quiet, to clean. The whispers retreated down drains and vents. Somewhere a real bird made a real bird noise, and I almost cried from how analog it was. Okay, the moderator said. Okay. And it stepped backward, just one step, to the line's far side. The others followed. The glow painted their legs, then faded. The auditorium doors yawned, but didn't insist. The blue painter's tape fluttered once, then lay still. School went back to almost normal. The bells were bells again. Classmates whispered regular gossip. The listeners sat with us at lunch and learned how to push a chair in without shrieking on the linoleum. Hannah painted a second square cat, this one with a little blue tape collar, and showed it to a listener, who took a picture by pretending to take a picture because their phones were props, and then drew her a stick figure cat in return on a tiny glowing bubble, and Hannah smiled like a sun lamp had been switched on. We were packing up to go when the ceiling lights flickered twice in fast succession. Not a glitch. A signal. My phone buzzed with a notification. Patch notes. Co-play boundaries. I opened it with fingers that didn't quite belong to me anymore. Added. Consent lines respected by listeners. Reduced. Auditorium polling feature. Fixed. Cafeteria tray physics exploit. Known issue. Some moderators continue to hear across lines. Upcoming. The night listening opt-in. Opt-in. Ms. Rivera read over my shoulder because personal space didn't exist anymore. Opt-in is good. Opt-in is better than opt-out, I said. The listeners walked me home. The sun looked real again. The curbs were boring, which felt like relief. At my front door, at Silence's loud paused. He pointed at the blue tape I'd put across the threshold. T, he asked, mimicking my mom from this morning. Voice warm in a way code has no right to be. Yeah, I said. T. We stood in the kitchen, me, a person, him, a square. My mom poured tea into a mug that said world's best in off-brand typography. She put a second mug on the table for him out of reflex. He looked at it, then at me, then carefully picked it up like a person learning how to pretend. He held it until the steam fogged his fake face just a little. He laughed. I laughed. It was dumb. It was nice. My phone buzzed again, one short ping like a heartbeat. New notification. It wasn't from the listeners. We heard you draw a line. We heard you liked it. Let's test how it holds at night. I read it twice and showed him. His face texture flickered, a blink that wasn't a blink. We can buffer, he said softly. We can try. But you can't stop them, I said. Not if you invite, he said, and his voice made the words serious. The kind of seriousness that knows the punchlines and uses them anyway. I looked at the window. The reflection looked back. For a second, I swear, my reflection had a name tag floating above it. It flashed and vanished. I reached down, tore another strip of blue painter's tape, and laid it along the windowsill with a careful, perfect press. The glow didn't come this time. It didn't need to. The sound of the tape sticking, that peel smack, felt like a save. Night listening? I asked. Opt-in, he said. And if I don't? I asked. Then we listen anyway, he said gently, because truth doesn't apologize. But we wait outside. At the line, I said. At the line, he echoed. And for the first time since the basement door, I believed it might be true. We drank tea. The house breathed. The portal downstairs hummed like a fridge with secrets. The sun inched. The day folded itself like a map back into the drawer. I felt watched because I was. I felt held because I was, a little, by something that didn't have arms unless you looked at it right. It should have been terrible, and maybe it was. But I laughed when he pretended to sip and fogged his own face again. And he laughed because I laughed, and we hung there in the joke like it was a net that could carry both our weights. My phone dimmed. The screen went black. On the glass, my reflection blinked in the kitchen window, and for a breath I was sure it wasn't my blink, but someone else's, a second eyelid behind the first, a listener listening to the listener. Then the window showed only me and my squarish friend and the line. But he didn't vanish. He just turned his head as if someone had typed, and he looked past me, not at me, and listened hard as if a voice had entered the room from nowhere and everywhere. And I understood, suddenly and completely, that he wasn't watching me. He was watching you.